So, welcome to the third in our series on how to have one on ones. In the first one, I just pitched it to you and said, please, please, please do regular one on ones with your people. It's the most powerful management tool you have. In the second one, we talked about how do you set yourself up, yourself and the person whom you are coaching, meeting with, managing, supervising. And that largely involved getting real clear on their roles, their objectives, and their weekly wins, which then form the basis of your conversation. We'll talk about that today. One more piece related to that last video, which I didn't state at the time, but which needs to be stated. When you're creating that worksheet, when you're fleshing out roles, 90-day objectives, and weekly targets, you should do that with the employee. Don't do that, don't go off into your own little cave and take care of that yourself. Do that in conversation so that once you start, you're already starting from a basis of agreement. They're already they understand and they buy into the work that you're having them to do. So, with all that, you've set yourself up well. How do you hold the conversation? That's the easy part, which we will get into in this video. So you see in front of you the sample one-on-one worksheet that we did. Actually, this was one that was real that I did for myself back in February of 2021. It reflected the roles as I understood them at the time, and then 90-day objectives and the weekly wins for a particular week, the week of February 8th through 14. So again, this would be the kind of worksheet that you would walk into your meeting with. You would have a copy and they would have a copy. Now, let's go over to, so here's a blank, right, that you would populate. And here's the 6 steps of the conversation. I recommend that you have a copy of this sheet and that they have a copy of this sheet, that you take notes, that you encourage them to take notes. You go through the questions one at a time. Question number 1, how are you doing? Now, this is after pleasantries, welcome, how was your week, what's going on. This is the how are you doing relative to the work that they're supposed to be doing. Their objectives are major projects, okay? Milestones that they're trying to accomplish. The weekly win is the work that they were supposed to do in the previous week. That's what you're looking at. Well, that's what you're reviewing this week. So you're reviewing what they were supposed to have done, and that's where you see in the weekly wins column here. So how are you doing? And of course, take that wherever it goes. You're just wanting honesty, clarity, specificity, right? Let's get down to the nitty-gritty of how they're doing relative to the performance that you're asking. Now, the second question flips the switch. This is very deliberate, and it's okay, so how am I doing? And again, it's, while this can go any direction that the person wants to take it, in context, it's how am I doing supporting you in the work that you're trying to accomplish. If this is initially difficult, give them easy. Give them on a 1 to 10 scale, where 10 is I am the most unbelievably awesome manager that you have ever had, down to 1, you can't believe that someone that sucks as bad as me is allowed to have a job in this company. How would you rate me? And if they say, well, I'd rate you an 8. Okay, great. So that says I'm doing pretty good on some things. Tell me a little bit about that, and then tell me what that gap is. And if you do this, there's a way to say this that invites them to share, right? It's going to be difficult. This first time you do this, this goes against the rules. This You're creating psychological safety, but initially they may not feel comfortable, and you're going to need to draw it out of them. So, how am I doing? This will get more comfortable over time. And again, an easy way to do it is, all right, give me a score, and then give me a little bit of background on what. The third, so what can we do better? And this is an opportunity for dialogue back and forth where you get to comment on their performance, they get to comment on your performance, you get to comment on your own, they get to comment on their own. So it's open, but it's always with an eye to improvement. Then you look ahead, and for this, I recommend you pull out a new worksheet, right? And you create in the line here. So we would have discussed this one, and then we'd either pull out a new one, or if we're working on computers, we can simply erase what's in the weekly wins for this week and say, okay, where do we want to be this time next week? You have the context right there in front of you. You know the role, you know the overall value that they're supposed to have, to be providing, and you know what the targets are 90 days. So between you, you can set stretching but manageable weekly wins for the next week. The fifth question asks you to turn your attention and theirs deliberately to the things that will make this difficult, right? So what might get in the way? Oh, I have meetings next week. Next week is quarterly close, and I've got a lot to do with that. It allows you to pull up the rest of their world and yours and discuss what might get in the way, so that either you amend your targets for next week, right? Bring them down a little bit, or you just find a way to troubleshoot so that whatever the roadblocks are, time, attention being pulled elsewhere, other deadlines, can be managed and still allow for the progress. Last question, a simple, what else should we be talking about? What's important in terms of your work, our relationship, etc.? And that may have an answer, that may draw forth some ideas, maybe not. But at the end, thank you for your time. Make sure that you've got your next one scheduled, ideally same time each week, so you know what to prepare for, when to be ready. Last point in this, the beauty of having, well, two pieces. Let's go back. If you do the work beforehand and you think about them, their work, and you do it with them, in concert with them, you think about their work in terms of their roles. You then sit back, and rather than just saying, hey, do your job and follow the job description, but no, let's think about objectives, something significant that they'll accomplish in the next 90 days. And then the weekly wins. If you'll do that part, you have something important to talk about. There's a reason to meet on a weekly basis. The other piece is you don't have to belabor it. You can get right to the point. They know what to expect. So over time, there'll be very little prodding on your part as the leader to walk through this conversation. It's productive. It focuses them. It strengthens the relationship between you and they. This is your process. 6 simple questions. How are you doing? How am I doing? What can we do better? What is expected progress for next week? What might get in the way and how will that be addressed? And what else? That's the end of our video on how to have one-on-ones. It really does work, y'all. It really does. Step into this. Do not give yourself the excuse, I do not have time. Or if you find yourself thinking that or saying that, step back and wait a second. So what is more important than the people who work with you? Short answer is nothing, right? So invest the time in them. Find the time elsewhere. As I spoke in the first one, get out of some of the useless meetings that you're in, and invest time here. So use Send me some feedback. Tell me how things are going for you. If you do run into questions, please shout them back, and let's start a dialogue on that. Um, and I just want to finish by saying I'm getting back into the saddle. This is kind of fun again, and I've already got plans for an extensive series of videos over the course of this year that I'm styling the Leadership Acceleration Project. So, anyway, look forward to spending. Then we'll have another one out next week, and you'll get to see what that looks like.